2 managers on duty and a security personnel. There's managers inside the premises, so there's a double whammy of speaking to clients.
Sorry, your 10 minutes is up. Are you almost finished?
I am, yes. Yes. If I could just have a couple more minutes, I'd be appreciative. And
having any more speakers?
I think Siobhan can speak. If there's any questions, she can deal with that.
She can deal with the questions. Okay.
Yeah, so I think I'll let that. So if I could tell Thank you very much. So on a practical level, in terms of dispersal, you have patrons, they go upstairs to the cloakroom and they're leaving in very small groups, and the CCTV extract shows this. And this brings me to the second of my proposed conditions, which is a last entry time, that there'll be no new entries. We don't want to attract new people. We want to service the people that are already within the venues, which has the added benefit of keeping them within a safe, secure environment and preventing noise on the street should they go and seek further entertainment elsewhere. It also allows for the gradual dispersal of patrons as they'll gradually reduce and leave over time. It also shows the CCTV extract, the number of people reduce significantly. Now, the premises is not located in any cumulative impact area. The licensing regime is permissive unless there's good reasons to restrict the application. We have considered all the representations. We would seek for evidence to be provided of specific complaints so that we can check them, but we have also considered 2 additional conditions. We're not complacent when it comes to the residents. We've implemented body cams, handheld measuring devices, and we do feel that in the absence of the rep from police and environmental health, and based on the evidence, the application should be granted. Just very, very quickly, last thing, I have suggested in my submissions that we would be open to a time-limited grant of this to further prove to the residents that we can operate well. Of course, that's in the members' discretion, and I'm happy to answer any questions in terms of that. And as I said, Siobhan and Michael are here. They're happy to answer any questions on dispersal, should you have it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was very thorough. We will now have questions from the committee. I will start. I would like to know why you have not applied for a pavement license. Your pavement license seems to have lapsed. Is that part of your policy that you won't be having tables outside?
No, the pavement license has been granted to deal with that. It hasn't lapsed as far as I'm aware to deal with that. It's been granted for 12 months. It's just been granted.
Lindsay?
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I believe that most pavement licences expire on the 30th of September. Yes. So my understanding is that the highway goes up to the building line and you would require a further pavement licence. If you want to put tables and chairs outside, you'll need to liaise with the Transportation Department in that regard.
No problem with doing that, Lindsay. I'm not dealing with the pavement licences, but my understanding, and I'm just trying to find the actual pavement licence that I've been provided with, but that will be resolved in any event.
Good.
Thank you.
Just so you know now, you know what the dates are. And I understand in the condition you have stated that you would have meetings with the residents, and I saw you called a meeting on the 9th of September and no one came. How did you communicate to the residents that there would be a meeting?
It was sent by email.
And
there was
a notice on the window.
There was a notice on the window and by email.
There was also 2 residents meetings. One was shortly after opening to deal with that.
To ensure that there had been no issues. And then the second one in September was to discuss this application before we actually submitted it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now call on my committee. Councillor Benton, do you have any queries?
Well, yeah, one little one. We were wondering about this because there's a condition regarding door supervision. It's a big place, and I'm just if we were to amend that condition number 13, because I'm thinking, you know, if you have 200 odd people there, then one security might not really cut it. So if there was something like 1 + 1 per 100 or something along those lines, is that something you'd be amenable to?
Just to clarify, at the weekend we actually have 2 security, although we're not, excuse me, not required to, but we do have 2. We have one inside at the back to ensure nobody goes out the back entrance, and then at dispersal, the second person comes out to help with dispersal. So in total at dispersal, there's 5 of us, including myself.
We've increased the security by our own risk assessments because that's what was set out in the original license. So we risk assess to see what's required for the business.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. I think most of what I want to ask has been covered. I wonder if you could give some colour to the process of dispersal, and particularly how many people are leaving, in your experience, the premises at certain times, particularly on sort of Friday, Saturday nights. You know, so up to 12:30, for example. When are you seeing people leave? Do they all leave at one time, or and how busy does the premises tend to get in terms of numbers at that point?
So what we have noticed is, well, firstly, we have a clue, so it always, you know, there's never, the whole place doesn't disperse at the same time. But we also have noticed, in speaking to people when they leave, I'd ask them, are they getting a tube, or are they getting a taxi, or are they to find out? And at the weekend just gone, I asked a couple of people why they were leaving, and they said they were getting the tube. If they're on the district line, they have to get the last tube, which I believe is 12:05. If people are getting the central line, it's later. And I noticed we did have a group of people, a party of people, and they were travelling to Finsbury Park. Some of them were leaving early, and then others were taking a taxi. So what we do at dispersal, we ask people before they leave, go out the door, how they're getting home. Do they need a taxi and to wait inside? We always ask them to wait inside. Sometimes they do insist on going out because they want to get a black cab. We say we'll get them one. But like last weekend, we did have an issue with a group of people, and they told us they're on the public highway and they could stay there. These are the people that Lana referred to that we said we would blacklist. They would not be welcome, and we told them on the night they would not be welcome back into the premises because they were disrespectful. We asked them to respect our neighbours. So you'd never see a big group, the whole place leave. We don't turn up the lights. Towards the end of the evening, we lower the music, we lower the tempo, get everybody quiet and down, and then we leave them for a couple of minutes, and we don't push everybody out. And because of the cloakroom, they all leave separately, and it's quite an easy and quick dispersal.
And we also have a breakdown of as people are paying up their bills. Obviously, that takes time, so that does slow out the dispersal. So there's never probably more than 10 to 15 people probably leaving at any one time, and the security do manage that and obviously move them up and move them towards the station if they are going to the station, to encourage them to move away from it. And away from Victoria Gardens, it's always down towards the station. And obviously because of the layout, because we are just in front of the traffic lights and the bus stop, so it pushes, obviously the taxi stop generally a little bit further down outside McDonald's, so it does force people down to that way.
And in just as a follow-up question to that, how the premises capacity is, I think, 220, if I remember correctly. How many people would you expect to be in the premises at 1 a.m.? Surely you must have some idea, given how many are in there.
Certainly not 220. Certainly not. I would say 50% of that or less. And it's really we've got a lot of people locally, I don't mean directly, but in the area, and that's why we applied to extend the license, because we've got a lot of people asking us, why do we close so early? Because they don't want to have to carry on and go into town or go to other places. And even now, so, we direct them down to the Arts Club. And that's the reason why we did it. And the reason we're there is actually for the neighbourhood. I've been in the area myself for many years, and that's where I used to socialise. I ran Beach Blanket Babylon for many years, so I know the area quite well. And it is, the whole of Notting Hill Gate is a residential area, and I knew that we would have people that wouldn't like the idea of having a bar there, but the bar has always been there, whether it be a restaurant or a bar. It has been there all the time, and it is a high street. But I'm very respectful towards the neighbours, and always have been, even in previous premises that I have operated. And with regards to Victoria Garden, I do not see anybody going down towards that part at all. They always go towards the tube station, generally, but I've never seen it. I park down in Victoria Gardens myself most nights, and I walk down there, and I've never seen anybody down there. Never.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just one more question. Councillor Benton, did you want to ask another question?
Just a brief one. This is more for a sort of sense of what it's going to look like. I mean, maybe to put some people at ease. I don't know, but I mean, given like if you do become a place that's open much later than everyone else, you're presumably going to be a destination for people who've been drinking elsewhere. For that last hour or so, and I was just wondering if you could say anything about how you'd potentially, I mean, you've kind of spoken a little bit about this, and you don't expect it to be full late and all that kind of stuff, but how are you approaching, like, I would imagine, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine there'll be an influx of people who are going to be a little bit drunker, a little bit rowdier later, for the end, for the last sort of hour or so of business. Does that ring true? And how? I mean, can you say anything about that to sort of put anyone's mind at ease if they're worried about just sort of a last rush of just basically noisier people?
I will let Siobhan and Michael talk operationally, because I expect you'll want to hear from the horse's mouth. But that is one of the additional conditions that I proposed, was to the last entry time condition, which we have no objection to, from midnight, because we did not want to attract the new people. We want to service the people within the premises already, to prevent them going from looking for entertainment or anything after our premises closes. So it is to capture the existing clientele and to aid in dispersal later on, to make it gradual. Siobhan and Michael,
and also, I've got 4 other bars. We're very, very strict in who we let in. There's a certain clientele we want. There's obviously a clientele we don't want. We will have clientele that we would hope would be respectful. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming in. We're not there for people to come from other venues that have already had too much to drink. We've got a license, and we've got to protect that. And we wouldn't serve anybody that's intoxicated. And
I don't think any of the CCTV, certainly from the extract I've viewed many nights, CCTV exhibits drunkenness in terms of that. Officers have visited the premises, and there's been no objection from police or EH in terms of drunkenness within the premises. So they clearly know how to manage the clientele entry. And of course, the condition in terms of security is that it will be risk assessed. So if needed, they can deal with security as well.
And also I'd probably say 90% of our business is actually pre-booked. Our last booking time is 9:30. So all of our, or any guests arriving need to be with us by 9:30. So we don't see a large amount coming into the venue after 9:30 anyway. And as Lana has explained, it's to suffice the people that we have inside and to serve those people, not to attract more people. And that we see that continuing with our bookings moving forward.
And a lot of our clientele are, 35 plus. We don't get a young crowd at all.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to ask one question. The music acts, what kind of music will it be and how many musicians will play?
Okay, it's not live musicians, it's backing tracks, and the floor team, the waitresses and waiters, they're professional singers, and they perform with a backing track.
I see it.
Yeah, and just in relation to that, this was discussed at the previous variation hearing. There was concern about noise emanation from the singers outside the premises. None of this has eventuated. There has been no complaints about noise emanating from the premises from the performers. There's substantial conditions on the existing licence, which we offered on the last occasion, dealing with noise escape. They've created a noise lobby as part of the refurb. There's no doors are allowed to be opened at the rear of the premises. The windows can't open. They did new windows in terms of the front of the premises. But there's lots of conditions dealing with noise escape. And as I said in my presentation, we're very happy to say that none of these concerns expressed by residents from the previous hearing, from when they opened, has actually materialised, also shown by the lack of objection from environmental health. So we're not concerned with what's happening within the premises, if I can put it that way.
Okay, and as far as food is concerned, you're a tapas bar, correct?
Small plates, yeah.
Small plates. And what is the percentage of sales? It doesn't have to be accurate. I'm just trying to figure out people are eating or not. It's not part of the license.
Yeah, it's between 30-35%. Most people, and then because we're pre-booked and we do a lot of engagement, and we do, they could either opt for canopies, but most of the bookings would have canopies or food of some sort, always.
That's very helpful. Committee, anything else? Okay, we will move on. Questions from the objectors.
Can you hear me? James Mannion here.
Yes.
Are you saying that all guests are pre-booked to come to the venue?
Not all guests.
Not all, most of them.
We find
because it's quite possible to walk in. You don't need to book, and of course it draws in a lot of late night drunkenness and leery behaviour outside the front. So it isn't the case that you have to book to.
No, you don't have to book, but 90% of our business is pre-booked. The small 10% that's not is generally made up from local residents and people from within the area.
But you do accept that there is leery behaviour, alcohol-related behaviour outside in the front. People having arguments, the noise of just late night drinking. I mean, it's just what goes along with alcohol.
Well, we keep them, we have the security there, and if anybody is talking loudly after 10 o'clock, we ask them to keep their voices down. And I'm there myself at weekends to ensure that this happens.
It's quite common to see drunken behaviour outside the front there.
I don't know if you've got, if you could give me any dates that we could look at the CCTV. I did get a noise complaint once, and I looked at it. There was nothing.
I mean,
it was a Monday.
I walk, obviously, coming home, because I'm in the flats above. There are 23 flats above, so there's 100 plus people living directly above you. But it's
Yes.
very common to see all kinds of normal drunken behaviour that happens late at night in a late night club.
I'm not, I've not seen it, and I'm not disagreeing with
Well, you work
I
there
can
every
say
night, so
that
you must see the behaviour outside.
I haven't, to be quite honest. I really haven't. Yes, there's people outside, and it's restricted according to our license after 10 o'clock. You can only have a maximum of 10 people outside after 10 o'clock. And I will say there is a tenant upstairs that I asked for her opinion, and she was asked to object. She said she had no reason to object. She has not had any problems with noise. She doesn't have any problems with smells that she had before, and she has got no reason to complain. She's never had a disturbance.
Well, where is she?
Where is she? She's
Why is she
not the
here?
Why?
And
I
it's quite
think
quite
I
obvious.
did
I think
ask
we can all,
she did not want to get
we all
involved.
know the kind of behaviour that happens with alcohol. So unless you're saying that you're an exception and your customers don't behave differently with alcohol,
Exactly, I am
obvious.
saying.
When you have alcohol license that's later than everyone else in the area, the people then you are drawn into you as the last place they can get a drink, and
No.
that
Which
means that
they
it
would, because
extenuates the kind of
the other
behaviour.
places around are open till 12 also, and we have said we would not have any more regulation on 12 o'clock.
James, this is not a place to attack her. You
Okay.
can ask questions and let her answer. Otherwise, I'm cutting you off.
Okay, just James, if I could just clarify, we did say we'll have no entry after 12 o'clock. We will have our customers that have been there from 9:30 that can stay till 1, but no entry after 12 o'clock.
Thank you. Are there any other objectors who'd like to ask a question?
Yes, please. Councillor Gardner.
Yes, Councillor Gardner.
I am correct, am I not, that your kitchen closes at 10 p.m. So essentially, this is adding a drinking hour as opposed to an eating and drinking hour.
Our kitchen, our main food, our full food menu that is available does stop at 10 p.m. However, a restricted menu is available all the way through until close. It's just the sake of having the full team of chefs in there until midnight isn't feasible.
That's interesting because that's not what you say at the front on the door when you have your opening hours and your kitchen open. That doesn't tally with what you're telling me now, with what you're actually advertising on the front of your premises.
As per the license, we have to serve food, and it doesn't say we have to serve a full food menu. So our full food menu that we do advertise does stop at 10 p.m. But we do serve food and offer food all the way through until we close.
Can I ask how much vertical drinking do you have? You don't have enough seating for 220.
You'll seat the area.
No, we don't have seating for 220. But when we applied for the license, it wasn't a condition that everybody had to be seated.
So what's the
220 is on the
proportion?
fire risk assessment to deal with that.
Yeah. So, sorry, what's the proportion of seating that you can offer as opposed to the amount of vertical drinking you can offer?
I think it's about 130 seated. But we're not a restaurant, not solely a restaurant, and we never portray to be a restaurant. We're a bar with a restaurant, with food and entertainment.
Yes, I think we're quite clear you're not a restaurant. Yeah, don't worry about that. Thank you. I think that's my only questions.
Thank you. Any other objectors have questions? Any questions from our legal officer?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask one question. In relation to the 510s you've had, were they for the same licensable activities and times as this variation?
Yes.
Yes, they were.
Thank you. And you've mentioned you've offered a 2-year possible temporary licence as an option. Would you, I mean, this is probably for the conditions session later on, but would you be open to less if the committee were minded?
Yeah, certainly we would be open to anything the committee would see as reasonable. We would just ask for members to consider sort of the time frame so that an accurate picture in terms of the extension of hours could be shown. For example, there's an application period of sort of, you allow 3 months, to go through the application process on everything. So we would want, so that a realistic time frame could be established in terms of seeing the impact of any variation. But Lindsay, yes, it would be up to members to decide.
Yeah, that's all my questions.
Thank you very much.
Could I just come back on that question and the point of, I mean, it is very clear that a licence usually stays with an applicant. What is the legal position about granting something for how many years?
The committee is able to grant a temporary licence for 1 year, 2 years, whatever the committee are minded to grant. And at the end of that temporary period, any extra conditions would fall away and it would revert back to the original licence.
Okay. And
time to the extension.
Can you also make that extension, anything like that, personal to the applicant as opposed to the premises?
I'm not aware that we can do personal licence, temporary licences. It would just be attached to the licence, and obviously the licence is in the name of the premises licence holder.
Thank you.
Okay, now for the objector's case, we have Mr. and Councillor Gardner and Mr. Mannion speaking. Please, can you present your submissions and do turn on your camera if you like. We have
just in clarification, we were going to do James Mannion first, then Emra Tatar, and then myself last.
Okay, that's fine. So, Mr. Mannion, would you like to start?
Thank you. Well, really, it was just to make the point that there are 23 flats directly above. There's 100 plus people who live above the Act. And as it is, there are 2 supermarkets either side. And the deliveries begin with diesel engines running from 5:30, 6 a.m. And so this is going to narrow the window of sleep when there is quiet. So once the Act, people leave, quiet will early in the morning. So it's one point just to say is that this is narrowing that sleep. And it being, as I've just said just earlier, it being the only really place where you can drink late at night, drawing people in to this little area, because that's the place they know they can get a drink. And so it's quite common to find that there is Larry alcohol type behaviour outside. I think that is, I think, will be understood by most people, that if we've got groups leaving late having been drinking, the idea that there isn't arguments between couples or people aren't behaving Larry, I think it's unreasonable to think that that's not the case. So it's quite common to see that sort of behaviour. You can't really prevent people from going one way or the other home. They go home the way they go home. And to say that you are somehow policing that they go some way down the street, of course they go in all different directions. And so they're taking that behaviour. However good a manager may be, or a bouncer may be, having a nightclub next to where people are sleeping it's obviously leading to the kind of situation that we have. People are urinating in front of the door, a lot of smokes outside, a lot of alcohol related behaviour. So I've certainly witnessed couples having arguments. It's really late at night. It's all the kind of things that you would expect with alcohol. so late, so next to where we are living.
Thank you. Ms. Tatar?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Could you play the video circulated on 10th of November, please?
Yes, I will do that now, Chair. Just give me a moment, please.
Mhm.
Can we have some volume, please? I'm not hearing anything.
There is no sound.
Just to let you know, we still don't have any sound on that. Anne, are you on mute? So I think if you take yourself off mute, it might work.
Was everyone able to hear the sound in the end?
No.
I couldn't hear the sound, but it's quite typical to see people shouting in the street at the end of the evening.
Dory confirms also couldn't hear anything.
We have all viewed the video, however. We have done that. As long as it's up, can you show us with a pointer where the act is in relation to what the video is showing us?
Unfortunately, someone won't be able to point on my screen, Councillor Evans.
Okay, so
But if they could describe it, that would be helpful.
yeah, Mr. Tatter, since it's you asked to see this, could you please tell us in relation to what we're seeing where the bar is?
So the blue car is in front of the act.
No, it's
The dark car.
Right.
is-
No, the bar is,
Near the
sorry, it's Michael
traffic
from the,
lights.
the bar is opposite the traffic lights, and you can see, it's just in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the push button for people to cross. We're across from that.
Okay.
Not across, it's on the side.
So where the cursor is now is where the bar is?
further down.
But,
It's further down.
into there. So if you move the cursor down towards where the play is, you see the play button, that's where the premises is pretty much.
So I think it's fair to say that where the blue car is opposite Ivy Lodge's residential door.
And and Tesco's, yes.
Okay, well, it looks like, and correct me, I'm just jumping the gun here asking my question, but since you've asked to have the video up, it looked like these people were coming from down the street.
I think
Yeah.
if you follow it through with the ACT zone CCTV, they are all coming from the ACT. I think the whole linkage is there.
Well, can we see that, please?
Sorry, Chair. I don't have the CCTV from the Act. All we have is the transcript that was sent to everybody.
Yes,
Which
and
has two stills in it and shows you the people in it.
Yes,
Yeah.
you
So
can
it's
see- you can
page
see-
4 of the 6.
Chair, this is Lindsay, the legal advisor. Can the objector confirm what date the video clip was made, please?
5th of November, Saturday, 12:06.
4th of November, did you say? Or 5th?
5th of November,
5th November.
12:06.
Thank you.
It was just clipping from Friday into Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually what we received from you. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Correct. And then if you look at the CCTV photos provided by the Act on page 4, you see those people coming out of the premises. The way the Ivy Lodge has a canopy, or the Act has a canopy that comes across. So you can't film straight down, there's a canopy, which is shown in the video. But that's why Ivy Lodge residents can't actually look down and say this person comes from here or here.
Well, that's very important for us in making our decision. Anne, are you
Indeed.
able to show page 4? Because I am not getting that on here unless I'm looking at the wrong page 4. But there's,
Sorry, it was sent as an additional document this week.
okay. Could someone put that up,
But
please?
there are no other places there.
Absolutely.
Well, certainly there's premises that close further up, for example, the Mitre, which closes at 12, and we know that there people are coming from there. You can also see it on CCTV, not provided in terms of this hearing, but they're walking down and dispersing past. So there are other premises dispersing at the time the footage was taken.
Okay, thank you.
Extract also shows pavements being clear in terms of any disturbance. It is getting into taxis and they are then taken away. So I didn't want the impression given that the pavements were packed full of patrons from the Act dispersing, because it's just not the case. And you also see in those CCTV extracts security ushering people away from Victoria Gardens and up towards the bus stop.
Okay, so now thank you, that was helpful. Let's get back to the objector's case, please. Mr. Tatar, did you want to say anything?
Just double check. You all watched the video with sound, is this correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So
Okay. Yes, go on.
This was from 6 minutes past midnight on Saturday, 5th of November, the Friday night opening. It was taken from my flat, which is immediately above the premises. As you can see and hear, the noise from patrons leaving can have a disproportionate impact on us residents above. It is even worse in summer, when all our windows are open. Alcohol consumption usually results in people being loud, yes, but we do get to hear all of it. The cumulative street noise lessens as the night wears on. In the summer, it was a multiple of what you see here, which occur regularly every week. The challenge of this application is, how late is reasonable for our sleep to be disturbed? I say midnight and no later, for the sake of me and my neighbor's sleep and sanity. I live in Ivy Lodge, the residential block just above the Act. Our front door is one shop front away. As you saw, my flat is the first floor of flats, so I'm probably the closest to the premises. And I have witnessed the noise coming from customers at the Act when they are in the street firsthand. In the additional document pack circulated on 31st of October, my complaint of the summer is included in full. Overall, the rise in the noise level since the Act arrived has been considerable. I compare this to pre-pandemic periods when the previous operator was Polpo, whose license was until 11 p.m. In our 1960s concrete block, the noise bounces up and tends to echo too. Since the Act opened, I have found myself a few times after midnight asking, what is going on? As the overall noise level in my flat was too high. It was people leaving the venue, saying goodbyes, some still singing the songs they heard in the Act, cars beeping, and stopping to pick them up for a good 15-20 minutes. From my window, I observed how it was enough for a few people to sing or speak loudly on the pavement, for others in the street then to also get loud. In this section of the street, any noise gets carried upward, and at night, the background noise drops significantly. As mentioned in my complaint, the noise even overpowered the TV, so I watched the street instead. Our lives have changed. Spring and summer weather is a lot warmer and longer. Flexible working from anywhere and anytime is here to stay. Windows, therefore, do have to stay open 24/7 for almost half a year, if not longer. In addition, inside my flat, I also keep hearing footsteps and door closing sounds. I now know they come from the Act's ladies' toilets, which is meant to be in the buffer zone between the Act licensed area and our flats. As these are the venue's first few months only, I haven't wanted to complain all the time, as I want them to succeed. And the hours are in line with Council's midnight policy. But moving this noise to any later hour at 1 or 1:30 a.m. is just too much of intrusion, impacting our sleep and our lives. When the nearby Hotel Ruby opens next year, its clients may also choose to join and hang around in the street to chat while spending time on their mobiles. Agreeing to a later closing time will mean many well-off, tipsy drunk people in the street in the early hours of the morning, chatting, smoking, and saying goodbye or waiting for their taxis home. This sends out the message that customers take priority over the sleep of residents. In addition to further noise, this will be an invitation to pickpockets. Managing tens or hundreds of people once they're outside doesn't belong to a license, I think. Just a few words on this whole process. 1, complaints seem to carry more weight than just being complimentary. 2, indisputable evidencing is not as practical as it may at first seem. Therefore, it is not a reasonable expectation. 3, the time and effort required from residents for each application is too much. Once Council's midnight policy is abandoned in this residential section of the street, this will set in motion a chain of applications for ever slightly longer opening times by an ever-growing number of venues, each making multiple applications in a year. The Act is in the wrong location, being beneath and near 3 residential blocks and with all the premises around it closing by midnight. Had it only been opened up the road, nearer the tube station, they could have obtained the later opening hours they want from the get-go, where there is more nighttime economy and there aren't the same number of living and bedrooms above and across. I accepted the midnight extension granted in February. I have not complained, despite the noise, until the second application in September. I would not want to experience the noise levels I mentioned any later than the current license allows, and would not wish this on anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. First of all, I should have a declaration of interest as at the previous application in February, I did object on behalf of my residents association as a resident. I wasn't a councillor at that stage. I am speaking today as a ward councillor and not in a personal capacity. Thank you. The crux of this application is that to extend the time for nuisance to neighbours from midnight 30 till 1:30 a.m. I suspect, given what we've seen of Mr. Tartar's video from his flat above the premises, and it's a shame we didn't have the volume because that's actually key to that video, that none of the committee would like their sleep interrupted in that way. At midnight or half past midnight, it might be acceptable, but not at 1 or 1:30 a.m. when you're more likely to be asleep. The venue has a capacity of 220, whether they leave en masse or in dribs and drabs. This sort of drunken farewell noise is like death by 1,000 cuts to those residents above or opposite. It's almost easier if they were all to leave at the same time, as you'd finish that noise. The Act, as they've said earlier, stops serving food at 10 p.m, 8 p.m. on Sundays. So this extension actually means that customers will have 3 hours longer to drink. And we all know that this means they're more likely to be merrier, louder, and maybe even drunk on leaving at 1:30 a.m. The Act's dispersal policy shows how even when ordering Ubers or taxis, it doesn't work to stop the noise. I'd like to give you some context about the location of the Act. This stretch of Notting Hill Gate is all closed by 11 p.m, with the exception of McDonald's, which is open till midnight. If we start by Victoria Gardens and we move along Notting Hill Gate towards Pembridge Road and the Tube, we have Oxfam. We then have the Entree Cafe, which closes at 8 p.m. We have Waitrose, the supermarket, which closes at 11 p.m. And that is also under Ivy Lodge. We then have Holland and Barrett, that closes at 7 p.m. Next comes the Act, and that closes at midnight 30. To the right of the Act is the EE mobile phone shop, closes at 6 p.m. Then you get the Ivy Lodge residential entrance. Next to them is Tesco's, which shuts at 11 p.m. Then you get the entrance to the residential Camden Hill Towers. To the right of them is McDonald's, which closes at midnight, the only premises to close at midnight. Next to them, Marks and Spencer's Food, which shuts at 10 p.m. An empty O2 shop. Itsu, which closes at 10 p.m. A gym and Boots, both of which shut at 8 p.m. And finally, at the busier junction, the Ollenstein Cafe, which closes at 8 p.m. on the corner of Pembridge Road and Notting Hill Gate. It really is a very quiet stretch of Notting Hill Gate. Even the mention of the Mitre residents, patrons, they tend to go down to Holland Park Tube because it's nearer, or they catch a cab from where they are. Few may walk. So the noise from the traffic reduces greatly, and the footfall too. The Act wants to liven the area up. Even its offer of closing to new customers from midnight can create its own new wave of new noise before midnight, as would-be customers arrive before the curfew so as to keep drinking. But even 5 people outside smoking can be noisy. You've seen from Mr. Tartar's video how the noise carries to Ivy Lodge, and perhaps the panel could re-look at that video with the sound volume on. In truth, the issue here is it's the leaving time that is the major concern, and the state of such patrons at 1:30 a.m. Singing and drinking make for a very happy crowd as they leave, and yet that can be misery for the sleeping of neighbours. I myself have noticed some inconsistencies in what the premises says, or it's required by its licence to do, and what it actually does. Condition 9 of the licence says that premises shall close to patrons no later than 30 minutes after the permitted hours from retail sale of alcohol. Yet on page 31 of the pack, the Act shows its Sunday closing hours by midnight 30. Its licence only runs until 11 p.m. Condition 22 states that a dedicated telephone number will be displayed, and I quote, "all from the highway." It isn't. In fact, I've looked for it several times, and it's not even on their lobby notice board. Condition 32 talked about the residents' meetings, and a meeting date being, quotes, "at least 2 weeks before the meeting." If the Act's meeting inviting residents to talk about the licence extension was a meeting, it was only sent on the 31st of August, with a meeting a week later. My concern is that the Act says one thing but doesn't do it in reality. As you can see from the pack, there are breaches of at least 2 planning permissions, the hours of the planters and the A boards, and as per the pack, the hours that customers can be on the premises. You yourselves pointed out that the tables and chairs licence has lapsed. It is quite interesting to hear from Mr. Tartar's video and see how it matches the CCTV images from the Act. I believe that's up on screen at the moment. If you could scroll down to the second photo, you will see the lack of traffic in the area. This is in stark contrast to the day, and it lessens even further until those Waitrose delivery trucks start arriving at 5:30 am. That's only 4 hours between the Act's extension of hours until 1:30. And that's really not much time for sleep for those residents. It is noticeable that none of the letters of support come from the Ivy Lodge residents immediately above the premises. One even parks in Victoria Gardens, and by closing an hour later will exacerbate the very noise that the Victoria Gardens residents complain about. I know there is a possibility to review a licence, but the reality, whether this is granted as a 10 or indeed as a proper licence or a temporary licence, is that actually people in the Ivy Lodge will have to get dressed and actually physically walk down to the street level and stand there and go up to these crowds and say, excuse me, did you come from the Act? The reality is we shouldn't actually even have to put those residents in that position. And briefly, I want to turn to the council's licensing policy, and that is midnight. And whilst every application is looked at on its merits, that case hasn't been made here. I refer you to Aeneas Lombard's additional evidence. And if you have a look at paragraph 19, it talks about RBKC's licensing policies, states that licensing hours play, and I quote, an enormously important part in influencing the times at which and the numbers, and this is my emphasis, state in which customers leave licensed premises. Similarly, I refer you to paragraph 23, quotes, any relaxation in permitted hours and licensed premises must take into account the level of disturbance already suffered by the Royal Borough's residents. When I did go, and I think there were 3 residents at the July residents meeting, Michael actually said they had tried the 10s and they were successful and they weren't going to apply for them. So I was really very shocked when in September this application came in. But the truth is, noise and the nuisance is bad enough for residents in Ivy Lodge above the property at midnight 30. Even from a small handful of patrons leaving to catch those Ubers, but it will be much worse on residents at 1:30 a.m. As Siobhan says, it's a bar that serves food. Please don't grant this extension for residents' sakes. The midnight policy is there for a good reason, so residents can sleep at night. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gardner. Now, we will have questions from the committee. I wanted to ask, first of all, Mr. Totter, can you tell me which nights a week are the busiest, or which is the busiest night a week that you noticed from the Act?
Busiest are usually weekends. However, during summer, for instance, there were a lot more celebrations. People would like birthdays or whatever for whatever reason. So on certain nights, it was just louder without any reason.
And that was
but the weekends were loudest. Weekends
Can
are
I
loud.
ask, do you mean by weekend? Do you mean a Friday night, a Saturday night?
Yes, both Friday and Saturday night.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just wanted to say, you mentioned, and I saw some people were worried about vomiting and urination. Did you yourself see that? And if so, how many times have you seen that?
Not from above. I mean, in the street, yes, you do see that, but I can't say this is directly from this or that person.
Okay, or from that premises. Okay, thank you very much. Next, Councillor Benton.
No, nothing right now. I think I'm just trying to get a handle on. I mean, I know it's really difficult to ask people to. I mean, I'm just reminded because I grew up in a place like this, right above a noisy place my whole life. So I kind of my mum was forever calling environmental health at midnight, you know. So I do understand it's a big ask to get a lot of, to get really sort of substantive evidence for this kind of thing. But I think I'm going to reserve the right to maybe chip in after Councillor Graham is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, I guess, more directed at Mr. Tatar, if that's okay. Would you say, in your experience, the noise is worse in terms of the level of noise and perhaps the nature of the noise post midnight as opposed to prior to midnight? Does it get worse?
Correct. So the 15-20 minutes I mentioned, so that was the regular occurrence, and that's when people leave. So the street level noise just increases a lot.
But I guess I'm trying to sort of, not necessarily the noise coming from patrons you perceive to be leaving the venue, but I guess the noise generally, given that the street is obviously busier earlier from people just going about their business. So you presumably get some noise, natural noise from that anyway prior to midnight. So you definitely think that even though the street noise is lowered after midnight, and probably more noticeable, you definitely think that the overall noise generally gets a lot worse after midnight, even taking into account the fact that the street is busy earlier.
Yes, not only after midnight, even that's why I'm actually comparing this directly to the period with the previous tenant, Polpo, who used to be in that area, whose license ended at 11. So for me, like after 11, there was a significant increase in noise to begin with. And then it's past midnight, all of a sudden, there is just this noise that wasn't there before.
How bad has the noise been up until now? I mean, clearly we're talking about extension, and we have no real knowledge. It's a bit of speculation as to what might happen given an extension of the hours. But in terms of the noise now from people leaving prior to midnight or just after, how much does that affect you currently?
For instance, when windows are closed, i.e. in colder weather, then the noise impact is less. However, for instance, the reason I shot the video was, I mean, the windows were closed. I just kept hearing this noise, and I opened to see what was going on, and all of a sudden I saw the reason. That's why I made the recording. So it wasn't as if, for instance, I was waiting for something to happen. I actually wasn't. I was inside, and because that noise prompted me. And also to give you like other examples, sometimes, for instance, there are noises, and then you go out and it's actually just one person talking very loudly on the phone. It's really this section of the street, because of everything is covered in concrete and glass, everything gets reflected up. So when this background noise lessens, i.e. anyone shouting and yelling, you do hear it.
And if that sort of behaviour has been exhibited up until now, and I do accept what you said about wanting the business to succeed. What if that's caused problems? Why have you been minded not to make more formal representations before now?
Well, they opened they opened in February, and right after you had, we had Omicron, so they were hit with that too. And I didn't know what this winter would bring. I actually wanted them to make money, and I didn't complain because it was also in line with the midnight policy. And I'm not sure, and that's why I also said, I guess because you're so involved in the process, maybe for you it's more natural. But I don't think people directly could just complain like about their neighbors. I really did want them to do well. Now, actually, through this application, now that I understand the process and how important complaints are, I guess going forward, I will complain more. I don't know.
And just one final question, Chair, if I may, and I realise this isn't completely relevant. In fact, it's probably very little relevance given the application is very different. But I just want to get a sense for the previous incarnation, Polpo, who you just mentioned. Did you have any similar problems or other problems with the previous incarnation of this premises?
They were allowed to in terms of, for instance, outside space. For instance, even the sounds of forks and knives and plates, they were actually coming up as well. But I could see that they were struggling and they were probably going out of business. So actually, I didn't want to say anything. And then they closed.
Okay.
Sorry, could I just add that actually Polpo actually had opening windows, so their inside was also outside. They had essentially slide back windows all across the front, so it was a different format.
Thank you.
So would you say then, given that the noise has generally improved since the new premises is there?
Up until 11 p.m. Yes, because the outside there is more restriction on the outside based on the experience with Polpo. So yes, up until 11 p.m. it has improved.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Tatar, how long have you lived at that premises?
For 10 years.
10 years. Have you always lived on top of a restaurant or bar?
I don't know. I don't remember when Polpo exactly opened, but yeah, I mean, I've always lived here.
Okay, and I was just wondering, as Councillor Graham's asked you as well, in the 10 years, has the noise increased? Has it been the same? That premises has always been there, as far as I know.
Well, it closed at 11 p.m. Therefore,
yes.
It was an all bar one prior to Polpo.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying it was a all bar one prior to it being Polpo.
So it was a bar before that.
yes.
It was all bar one.
All
Yes.
bar. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Okay, Councillor Benton, did you have another query, or would you like to go on?
No, actually, Councillor Graham, and yourself, actually, you sort of cover some of these things just about how it's changed, if at all, over time. Also, I mean, if you are, I understand it's anecdotal, but if you are talking about, you know, urination and vomiting and things like that, has that got any worse? Did that get any worse when the license became later? I mean, my intuition is that comes, you know, people don't usually do that next to the place they've been drinking. They usually do it on the long walk home. But so I just wonder if those kinds of things that I understand you don't have evidence for it, that's fine. But you know, just in your experience, anecdotally speaking, do you think that those sorts of things have actually got worse as the licenses changed? Hours have changed.
I've been shielding since the pandemic. Therefore, actually, my activities outside are actually a lot less than usual. That's why I can't really compare.
Right. Okay, any questions now from the applicant?
Yeah, there you go.
Just a couple, which sort of goes on from the questions that the councillors asked, which is the first time the premises contacted the premises was on the 29th of October at 11:06 p.m. And we responded to that at 11:15 p.m. and actually went up to your premises to deal with that. But that actually was the first time you specifically contacted the venue. If you could just confirm that.
I contacted the venue regarding the footsteps and the door closing sounds.
Correct, but that was the first time you contacted the venue.
That was the first time, because over the summer I did hear that noise as well. However, one, I wasn't quite sure because it was so loud outside as well. And two, in our concrete building, it's quite tricky to identify the source of a noise. So I didn't want to make a ungrounded complaint, so to say. But in October, as the windows were closed more I could then input the source.
Emma, isn't it worth saying, I think you've explained to me that you did try to go through the noise nuisance line on that, but they weren't interested in footsteps.
Oh yeah, at first they were interested, and then they were like, no, actually we are not interested. So it was a
just in relation to that, I can't comment obviously on what noise and nuisance said, but you also made comments, as to why you didn't object previously, and that was because you weren't aware of sort of the process to deal with that. But I do have a letter that you wrote to all the residents of Ivy Lodge.
I didn't say I wasn't aware, but okay.
Okay, I'm just clarifying because that was what I understood in terms of the process. And your letter to the residents certainly was logging in it, telling the residents how to object to this application, which there's nothing wrong with. I'm not complaining about that, of course, but also in terms of the process of reporting complaints, you provided RBKC's website and the noise nuisance number. And obviously something that the premises struggles with is they fully understand what the residents' concerns are, but it's the lack of actual notification of any complaints or issues in terms of the premises. There's never been any complaints in terms of vomit, urination, etc. It just doesn't happen. The premises has been inspected by the licensing team as part of the pre-app for this, and also earlier when we were doing some TENS, and certainly, numbers on the menu, etc. The breaches of conditions that Councillor Gardner mentions has never been verified. It's all been no complaints have been made in terms of that. So I think what we're struggling is just if you're aware of all of the complaints of the complaint making procedure, why complaints haven't been made. I mean, Siobhan is very open to residents. The first meeting was a residents meeting. The second meeting that Councillor Gardner dealt with.
This has to be a question, please.
Sorry, it was really just
your point. So please make a question.
It was just in relation to following up as to why complaints aren't being made, and if in the future, if you do have any issues, just confirming you will contact Siobhan and Michael and the noise nuisance team if you wish, but so that things can be dealt with and CCTV can be checked. It was just that confirmation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tartar, would you like to answer that?
So the question is, why didn't I complain? As I said, I accepted the decision in February that the license was extended until 12. Well, that's why I didn't complain. It was in line with the license they have.
Okay. Any other questions from the applicant?
It would be fair, if I could just supplement that actually most residents accept a license and accept the issues. What actually often brings in focus is that when a subsequent application to extend an hour to do something different on the license is where the relevance of complaints is highlighted to residents, which they're not aware of, and they don't see the weight that's added to formal complaints. So actually, when you're trying to be good neighbourly and trying to either sort things out or accept things as they are, you don't formally complain. And it's only when you come to a process like this that you realise the weight that gets attached to complaints. And I think actually residents are terribly inconvenienced by that because they just don't realise until it's too late that actually they should have been making weekly complaints.
Based on fact.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, not just random complaints every week. You could
No,
have the
indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't mean they should have it on speed dial, do you?
No. Obviously, you only complain if there's something to complain about, correct?
Exactly. Okay, any other questions from the applicant?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to our legal officer. Lindsay, would you like to ask some questions, please?
I don't have any questions of the objectors, Chair, but I'm ready to move on to the draft condition sessions when you are.
I think that's a good point. Let's do that.
Anne, can you put the draft conditions on the screen, please? Thank you. If you could just scroll down a little bit, please. So I haven't added too many conditions because obviously there was the February hearing where there's quite a lot of conditions attached to the licence. In relation to the 2 conditions put forward by the applicant, I've just got a couple of further amendments to kind of add in case any 10s are applied for on other nights. So I'm just going to read out the alternative slightly amended conditions, and if anybody's got any comments. So in relation to the first one, I've amended it slightly to say from midnight on Thursday, Friday and Saturday nights, and on any other nights when the permitted hours are extended beyond midnight, a maximum of 5 smokers shall be permitted to smoke outside the front of the premises at any one time. And then in brackets, the same for the avoidance of doubt, this condition will apply and supersede condition 28 from midnight. Lana, anyone else, are you okay with that as slightly amended?
Yes, in principle. I mean, I do struggle, Lindsay, just in terms of the enforceability, because if you apply for a 10, you're not operating on the premises licence. You're operating under the temporary event notice, so conditions wouldn't apply as such. But in principle, so it's very, I don't think it's enforceable, you know, in that sense. But in principle, yes, we all know what you are seeking, you know, if there's any temporary event notices, and there's no objection to that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you. And then in relation to your other condition, slightly tweaked, from midnight on Thursday, Friday and Saturday nights, and on any other nights when the permitted hours are extended beyond midnight, there shall be no new entries or re-entries to the premises after midnight, save for persons temporarily leaving the premises to smoke who have already entered the premises prior to midnight. Are you okay with that as well?
No concern with that. That's fine.
Okay, fine. I was just wanted to look at condition 13 on the existing licence. It's about SIA, and I just wondered if you would be open to that being amended to read as follows.
Sorry, which condition? Okay, yeah.
Sorry, existing condition 13, which is your SIA one, which says a minimum of 1 SIA door supervisor to be on duty at the main entrance Thursday to Saturday from 9 PM until 30 minutes after close. If you want, I'm just going to read out my proposal. Save for occasions agreed with the Metropolitan Police in writing before the event, a minimum of 2 SIA door supervisors shall be on duty at the premises from 1900 hours until the premises have closed to the public and all customers have left the vicinity, and 1 additional SIA door supervisor shall be provided for every 100 patrons over 200. A copy of the written consent of the Met Police shall be sent to the licensing authority 7 clear days before the event takes place. Do you want me to read that again?
No, I don't think. I think the thing is increasing the start time till 9 PM, increasing additional security from 7, and then 1 to 100. We are not a nightclub in terms of what our operation is, and this was gone through in terms of the first variation hearing. And in terms of the financial viability of this business, that's imposing a huge financial onerous burden on the premises. We are quite happy to accept a condition in terms of being risk assessed in terms of numbers, but in terms of the actual obligation to have all these additional security when there may be less people in the premises is a financial burden. We do at the moment have 2 security on Friday and Saturday nights, so there's no objection in terms of that being imposed on the licence to deal with it. But to impose additional numbers when there's no evidence, I have to say, in terms of activities within the venue, There's no issues in terms of that. There's no issues or evidence of drunkenness of the patrons. The licensing inspectors have been in to deal with it. There's no actual evidence of that within the premises, which is when security, and thirdly, the Met Police have not put in a representation in terms of imposing additional security. So I would just urge members to be very mindful of the financial burden in this climate that we're in. The premises have shown that they risk assessment. It's in their dispersal policy that it's risk assessed. They've exercised that discretion to increase the numbers through to 2 to assist on Friday and Saturday nights, and to impose earlier hours and yet more additional security. It is just a financial burden. Michael and Siobhan, do you have anything further?
The only additional thing we have is the body cams that are audio body cams. So there's always evidence of anything if it's ever required.
And is that always on?
Always
all the time?
at dispersal.
Okay.
Always at dispersal.
It's a dispersal, or if we believe there isn't something starting to happen, then it will be turned on.
And that's just the SIA staff that wear the body cams, not you guys.
It's just simple slide, so it's very simple, very quick to put on.
And we download those every night for dispersal. So if there's any questions, anybody can see it at any time.
Okay, so you're saying at present you have 2 SIA on Friday and Saturday nights.
Yes.
What about the Thursday night as well? If my members were minded to grant the extended hours, what was your view on Thursday nights as well?
To have 2, I don't think it'd be viable. As Lana said, financially it wouldn't be viable. However, if it did get busier, of course, if we thought it was necessary, of course we would.
As we have done by our license currently, we have risk assessed and we have taken the decision to increase on the days we require.
Okay.
If there's no requirement, it's very uncommon to sort of impose ratios in terms of security at venues these days. It really does come down to the individual risk assessments and what the operation actually is. And also to have the additional numbers from the earlier hours at 7 p.m. We don't think that's justified in terms of even cost and the need, because it's a
restaurant
even
at that stage.
Even though we do have one starting at 6:30 currently, but that's
stuff.
That's they act as a host as security at that host at that time. So
they are taking responsibilities seriously, and I just ask members to consider, the actual evidence and the reason for that.
Okay, so you're not happy with 7 p.m. and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You're okay just with Friday and Saturday 2 SIA.
Yes,
correct. 2 SIA, correct. Okay. As a minimum, Lindsay.
Yes. Thank you. I think someone's got their hand up. Was it Councillor Gardner?
It was. On page 7 of the pack, the existing licence, the opening hours I think are wrong, particularly the Sunday hours, and the fact that it says Saturday, and this is what's shown at the premises. But actually, the hours that the premises shows, I think they start at sort of 1 o'clock and 4 o'clocks and 2 o'clocks in the afternoon. So I think without a doubt this should be corrected if you can, please, regarding the typo that it should be Sunday. And I think the Sunday hours are clearly wrong if it's only an 11 o'clock licence. But
Councillor Gardner, I agree in terms of the Sunday. I think I may have emailed licensing about that. That's just a typo in terms of the opening hours. But certainly the opening hours of the premises should remain, the actual time should remain as existing. They're indicative for the public to know when the premises can open. They can open when they would like to open. It was originally, you'll know, it was discussed we were going to open in the afternoon and hopefully come in earlier, and that's still the case. But they're just indicative of the premises, so we wouldn't ask for those to be changed at all. Not a review of this existing licence.
So can I just clarify, just for the amending a mistake, Sunday's opening hours are from midday to 23:30, is that correct? Opening hours.
On the existing licence it was 12:30. I'm just looking at the decision now.
So it is an 11 p.m. licence, so you are correct, 23:30.
Okay, so 11 p.m. on sales ends, and then the half-hour drinking up 23:30 end of hours. Okay, so licensing, we can make a note. Is that the only typo, Councillor Gardner? Sundays, opening hours?
Yes, I mean, there's clearly a difference between reality, which is all
Yes,
4 o'clock and 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock for the weekend. But yes, thank you.
Okay. So that's the main conditions. I think Lana referenced condition 23, which amending some wording, I think you said, about the dispersal, adding in some wording.
Oh, yes. I mean, the concern from the representation and submissions from Victoria Gardens was that dispersal was occurring. I mean, we direct dispersal away from Victoria Gardens, and we have no issue with including that on the condition that dispersal is directed away from Victoria Gardens.
Is that in your dispersal policy, or that wording?
It is.
Right, so it's already in the dispersal policy. It doesn't necessarily need to be also added into condition 23.
But we just wanted to confirm that that's actually the case. And from all the CCTV I've shown, the patrons are all going towards the bus stop. There is a taxi where taxis pull in immediately out the front of the premises, but they're not going further of Victoria Gardens, and there's certainly no evidence of urination, etc.
Okay, lovely. I don't have any further draft conditions. Was there anything else that's cropped up that anybody else thinks needs to be conditioned?
Yeah, and what is the flexibility on about the SIA staff? We said 7. You said 7. Can that be, if we choose, can we make that later? Because it's a huge problem for the owners, in fairness.
But that's obviously for you to judge. I mean, the applicant said that it's a financial viability issue. I think it's 9 p.m. at the moment, Fridays and Saturdays, but obviously we can discuss that in private session. But the applicant's made it clear that obviously 7 p.m. isn't viable, and nor is adding SII for Thursday night.
So there is latitude. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the applicant's made it clear that obviously you can consider less than a 2-year temporary licence if you're minded to grant as well. Was there any other matters that have cropped up that people think might need to be conditioned at all?
Could I just ask, sorry, just on that temporary licence, they then have to come back for another full licensing hearing? Is that how it works?
Well, if there's relevant representations made, yes, they will need to, yes.
Or they don't.
And the licence will fall away at the end of the whatever period's determined.
So, yeah, okay, that's a shocker.
Councillor Benton, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I just want to feel out how people feel about condition 34. It's 2 meetings a week with residents with 2 weeks notice, notify ward councillors, RAs, etc. If people want to have more meetings than that, I mean, I don't know if that's something. I don't know, how we can condition that. I'd just be curious as to how everyone would feel about that if they were made more, say, every 3 months or 4 months or whatever. I mean, is that something that people are thinking about?
And could I add an ancillary question to Councillor Benton, is whether they could improve on the communication, because they say they email. Well, who do they email? I think perhaps there should be a leaflet to peripheral properties or something like that, because they couldn't possibly have everyone's email, and to email the Residents Association about the meetings. We did do that in another case, and I think the residents were happy with that. So could we write that the communication can be improved?
Check. I possibly just comment on.
Yeah, unmute.
From the applicant's point of view, there's no concern with upgrading the wording in terms of communication. They obviously are in contact with the building manager, etc., and they're provided with details, and it sort of becomes a flow-on process. And the residents' associations are notified as well as the councillors. I know comment was made that the notice period of 2 weeks wasn't held for the second meeting, but I make that clear that wasn't a breach of anything. They've only had one meeting, like a residents' meeting. The second meeting was specifically to discuss the variation, and that was put in those requests. So there will be another residents' meeting again.
So we can put in
Yeah, so when we're happy to meet as and when is necessary, but it's attendances from the residents in relation to that.
So perhaps you could put up a sign or something like that.
There is a sign in the window. A sign goes up in the window of the premises in terms of the dates. That's already done. It was done for both meetings that were held. But certainly, in terms of you notified Councillor Gardner, we obtained her email address from the previous hearing, and she's been to the premises subsequently to meet Siobhan and Michael as well.
Jane from Bulmer Muse.
And various residents from Bulmer Muse, etc., that we have contact details for. We notify them direct as well.
I think it showed them the recipients.
I think the email was.
I mean, I would say that particular meeting was just days after the carnival, and actually most people in the area do go away. So, you know, I think your timing was really quite poor on that. But you know, perhaps you'll learn again in the future.
But maybe if somebody wants to set some dates, you know, to have a meeting every month, we're willing to do that. Joanna, if you wanted to come to us with dates and you arrange it with your residents, we'll be there.
The first, we want to do the first Monday of every month, or whatever it may be.
No, I mean, I truthfully, I just think, I think you can go into overkill. I think this hearing is about really whether people want their sleep on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday messed up in this way. And I think Ivy Lodge is your key area, your key residents. And I don't think you do pay a lot of attention to them, but I'm not turning this into a speech.
Good. Councillor Gray.
If Ivy Lodge is just directly above, and nobody has come to us or me, and what I have heard from a few people, that they don't have any problems. I know this, depending on where their flat may be, it could be different. But if we hear about these things, we will deal with them. We do not want the issue. I do not want people to be disturbed. I wouldn't like it myself. I wouldn't like my parents, whatever. But if people tell us, we can deal with it. Like Mr. Tahar told us that he could hear a door. We dealt with it. As soon as we heard, within 6 minutes, whatever it was, Michael went up to his...
Siobhan, I don't really understand that when you see, I mean, it's really unhelpful there was no audio to today's hearing on the video, because that is the noise that whenever people are trying to get cabs, they're either chatting on the pavement, or as you saw, they were running back to get their friends from the act. That's the noise that they're hearing in Ivy Lodge, which is above you. And that, if you've got people going out in groups, and they're, as Michael says, they're all leaving in groups of 10 to 15 at a time, that's the group that you are getting repeatedly for 15 to 20 minutes on, and you now want it at 1:30 a.m. or up to 1:30 a.m. That's the noise that you can't tackle. And that is the
Councillor Gardner.
But we have the CCTV of that, of every weekend.
Yes, and I think it matched exactly what Mr. Tartar's video showed with the noise that he can hear, which you on the ground floor level are not hearing in that same way, apparently.
Councillor Gardner, you had your chance, and you have a question, but there's no summing up, as I mentioned before.
Chair, can I just add in something quickly here, going back to Councillor
please.
Gardner's previous query? I just want to make it clear, when I said the licence falls away at the end of the temporary period, it only relates to the temporary aspect of the licence. The original, it goes back to the original licence if a temporary licence is granted. I just wanted to make that clear, that the original licence stays in place at the end of the temporary licence.
Okay, thank you. Now, any licensing officers have anything to add?
Nothing further from licensing, Chair.
Oh, thank you.